Hello, welcome to another video. This is ChiCodeCrafty. From our last video, we wrote some basic tests for our shopping cart class. Okay, now today we are going to be writing some basic tests for our library catalog class. Now, before we get into writing the test for the library catalog, it's important we verify the functionality of the methods present in this class. Now we can see there are few methods present in the library catalog class. One is the add book method, which just simply adds a book title and then the quantity of the book into this book inventory right here. We also have a borrow book method, which takes in a parameter, the book title, and then depending on the parameter, it reduces the quantity of the book in the book inventory. That signifies we are borrowing a book, right? And then at the end of the day, it returns true, meaning we can still borrow book, right? And then once the quantity is 0, we return false based on this check right here. Now we have the return book. The return book simply takes in a book title parameter and then increases the quantity, right? And then the get available quantity simply takes in a parameter, the book title, and then returns the quantity of the book and defaults to 0 if the book title is not present in the book inventory map. All right, let's get into it. So we need to create the class called library catalog test. Good. So we bring in our class private final library catalog. We can call this catalog is equals to a new catalog. Okay. So the first thing we need to test is the add book method. Okay. So we write a void add book and then annotate this with our tests. Right. We can also add some description with this annotation display name. You can say should add books to catalog successfully, right? That way somebody is able to understand what the method actually does. You can get rid of this using the same pattern, the arrange, the act, and the assert. Okay. Now for the arrange, we need to add some books to the catalog. So we can just call our catalog.add book. We can add Java, add 3 quantity, right? We can add Ruby. We can add 5 quantities of that, okay? And then for our act, we can say int, let's say Java quantity is equal to catalog dot get available quantity. We pass in this title Java. You can say int Ruby quantity equal to catalog dot get available quantity Ruby. Okay, good. Now we can assert this. We can say assert equals. We can assert that the catalog dot okay, we can assert this that the Java quantity is equals to 3, right? We can assert that we have that. We can also assert that the Ruby quantity is also equal to 5, right? Okay, so if we run this test now, we can see it passes. So let's just make sure what we're doing is actually correct. If I add 4 here, this should fail because our Java quantity is actually 3, right? So let's run this. Now you see expected 4 and the actual is 3. So with this test, we are sure that our add book method, right, is actually adding the book and the quantity correctly to the book inventory map. Okay, now let's move to the next test, which should be borrow book, right? Now let's test the borrow book. Yeah, so we're going to annotate this. Let's add a display name. Should be able to borrow a book successfully. Should be able to borrow books rather, because we can decide to borrow more than one. Okay, we have the arrange, we have the acts, and we have the assets. Okay, now for the arrange, we can add these 2 books again, Java and Ruby. Okay, so we can merge this act and assets into one, just to make things simpler. Act and assets. Okay, so now let's go back to this method borrow book. You can see what does it do. It actually takes a book title, and then depending on the book title, if it's available, it reduces the quantity, okay, and then returns true, right? But if the book is not available, if the title is not available, it returns false, right? Returns false. So let's test that. So we've currently added 2 books, so we can say the first test, we can say assert, let's assert through. We can assert through catalog dot borrow book. Okay, then we can borrow Java. If we run this now, see it passes. Okay, now if we say we can assert also equals, we've borrowed 1 book here, we've borrowed 1 book here. So remember, when we borrow a book, the quantity reduces, so the quantity of this is now 2. Okay, so if we say 2 should be equal to catalog dot get quantity, available quantity. Okay, if we run this now, you see it passes, which is correct, because on this line we borrowed the book Java, so the quantity should be this. Now if we try to do this assert false, we can assert false by trying to enter a non-existing book, like a book that doesn't exist. Catalog that borrow does not exist. Okay, now this should pass. Good, you can see it passes. Why does this passes? Because you can see from the method says if the book inventory contains this title and the title is greater than 0. So in this case, it doesn't contain the title, so this check doesn't pass, right? And then it returns false. Just to make sure that what we're doing is actually correct. If I passing through here, you would see our test would fail. Now you see expected true, but the actual is false. Okay, this, so yeah, false. Yeah, so I believe you're getting the idea, right, of what we're doing here. So we can also do the same thing for Ruby, right? We could assert through, right? We can say catalog.borrowBook Ruby. Okay, now run the tests, passes. Okay, and now if we try to assert the quantity, assert equals, okay. Now we've borrowed one book here, so we are assuming that the quantity should be 4, right? Because we just borrowed one Burby, so the quantity should be 4. So if I say catalog.get available quantity and I pass in Ruby 4, run the test. Good, you can see it passes. Okay, now just to be sure, if I pass in 5 here, this should fail, right? Because we borrowed Ruby here, so the quantity should be 4 left. As you can see, expected 5, but the actual was 4. Okay, now you can see how useful writing test is, right? Let's say we have some developer now who tries to do some kind of adjustment or some kind of modification to this borrow book method, and while he was doing that, he mistakenly introduced a bug which makes this return value here returns true, right? You can see this is now changing the actual intention of this borrow book method. The developer just introduced a bug by mistake. Now once the developer tries to build up his project again, you would see that the test will start failing. You can see the test starts failing. Now with this, the developer is able to find bugs and fix bugs on the fly while he's still developing, right? So it makes the work a lot easier and save you a whole lot of stress. Okay, so yeah, so let's move to the next thing. The next thing is we're going to test this return book. Let's test the return book method. Void return book. Add the tests annotation, and you can give this a description, right? Should be able to return a book or return books, be able to return books successfully. Okay, we have our arrange, our acts, and add this same book here. Let's add this. You can add, and then we can just merge these two together so that we are quick. Act and assert. So we can do this. We can so we are testing our return books just to make sure that it works, right? So let's do this. Let's assert this again. Let's assert through. We can borrow a book. Okay, then assert the quantity. So you can see here catalog.borrow book title. So the quantity of this should be 2 because we just borrowed here, right? So assert 2. If we run this, you can see it passes. Okay, now if we do this, let's try to return a book now just to see. So if we say catalog.return book, right, this is returning a void. So let's do this. We remove this from here. So do this. We are returning the book. You can see. Now, if we assert equals, then the quantity should be back to 3. Okay. Now, if we say catalog.get quantity, we pass in the title Java, we run this, you can see it passes. Now I believe you're getting the idea, right, of testing. So we write tests based on how our method works, right? So that's how you build your test. All right, so that's it for today. So our next video is going to be an interesting one. We are going to be moving into Spring Boot. So we'll be building a simple to-do application, like a simple task management application, and then we are going to write tests for it. So with that, we are going to learn Spring Boot testing, mocking, etc., etc. It's going to be a fun one, so watch out for that. All right guys, that's it for today's video. See you guys in the next.